When you look on this Building Back Better graphic, in economic terms, financial terms, of course, also behind the financial terms that Building Back Better pays back is a social, economic, and a cultural aspect we need to see. So if we look on the disaster event, what we just were discussing now in the group, the point of the response is mainly a management challenge, no? Because you have to be fast, you have to save lives, you have to have an emergency team, you need to be effective. So if we go towards imagining our local government, there's a lot of disorder in that moment. Everybody's under shock. So the main concentration is, of course, how do I manage the disaster? And then, of course, when we look on the early recovery is not necessary. There's no definite best time. No, the recovery is important to think in the moment of the emergency. You need to think about recovery. For example, when we look on the COVID response now, there was a lot of ideas. Okay, we need to have a better health system. We need to have more and better paid health workers. No, if you don't get this done now, then it probably will not be done because there are moments of awareness, of acceptance, of political will, of pertinence, which are important to use. And when we look on the Building Back Better, as earlier recovery is thought through and started, as better later is the benefit. If we go to the next slide, there we have some examples. Here, yeah, the first part is, of course, we have the 3 pillars, and these are also in our UCLG guideline of our task force. So this means building back stronger. This was already said by Sanjaya in the lecture before. This refers very much to infrastructure, but also to the functioning of the cities. Building back faster, I think the result of this exercise was clear. A good management system, and this is a very important lesson that is not to underestimate. No, that if we are prepared to manage disaster, it's a management school, and it's a very important management improvement. Usually, this is a little bit when we said in the beginning of this training of trainers, we reminded our work with the LSE, emergency governance. So a lot of efficiency can be gained of the management style from the disaster. Then building back more inclusively. This is one of the very important aspects that is very much discussed. Everybody is aware, wants it, but it is not that easy to do it. Really, to look on the vulnerable population, how do you look to them, how do you involve them? And the only way is participation, so open participatory elements, because of course, once this is done, they have a lot of possibility, they have a lot of capital, they want to usually improve their own situation. And this is often a lesson of those who are in disasters. For example, in my own experience, when I was with the Aceh disaster, many people said we totally underestimated that the community is able to do everything. They are 100 heroes in every neighborhood, and we need to see them and to work with them. So in the next slide, when we look on the practices, here we have 3 practices. And the first one, I think, is very interesting. In Iran, I think what is, for example, when heritage sites are destroyed, like in Kathmandu, or now we also have seen this with the Syrian war, this is an enormous impact, not only materially, but also culturally. And in this way, as we said in the beginning, when we also emphasized that strategies need to consider culture, this is really an important experience, I think, that the way how it was rebuilt, or that there is a study of the traditional building materials, what can we do, how can we improve them? Because of course, traditional building materials usually have been standing 1,000 years because they are proper. But we all know in the earth construction, it's difficult with very hard earthquakes. So not replacing with tested concrete designs, which is often the case, or was often the case, for example, after the Second World War in German cities. But looking into the traditional building and improving that structure, this is a very important effort. And of course, also it's another perspective, an architectural perspective maybe versus an engineering perspective. So a little bit more in a more diverse vision, I would say. Then the part of East Japan, this is very clear. Japan, we always mention, because they are so into the recovery, and there are so many lessons learned, in particular on regulation, on technical solutions. And the cities changed, and they changed and got resilience in the infrastructure. So the dikes, roads, the housing projects, they all got more resilience, and people really started to change the mindset and came up with really interesting designs. So it was not only an immediately physically protecting block, but Japan cities and Japan design is really improving or not improving, inspiring, I would say. So it was essential to generate synergy between the People's Build Back Better strategy and risk reduction principle, because of course, when we see, for example, building control or building laws, they change, but how do this trigger down into an informal settlement, or in Japan, in the case, in simple solutions for middle or low income housing. No? So this is an adoption process and a thinking process, which is important, and it gave good results over the years. In Haiti, it is a pity. This is a very drastic example, because we just now we see again Port-au-Prince and many other cities again devastated from one disaster into another. And here, what Sanyaya said, it is a cascade of disaster. This is probably a very, very sad example of this cascading, because it's not only the earthquakes, the hurricanes, and the hazards that meet. It is a vulnerability instead of getting less vulnerable, people get more vulnerable with all the political conflict, the governance conflict, the social conflict. And there is, of course, if you are in an almost failed state or in a failed state, it is very difficult. Cities also are in this move. And then the funds of foreign governments and agencies, which were very high, I think 15 years ago, when there was this large earthquake, I don't remember now the exact date, is now going down, and people say, it's not useful, this is not going to any end, and of course people stay back. And there we have not only we leave people back, we leave a place back. And that are some examples where we can look at that recovery, and the way how we recover is critical, because you can lose all the cards internationally as well.